Long before human kingdoms rose beneath the northern skies, before castles, empires, and written history itself, the dwarves of Norse mythology were already shaping destiny beneath the mountains. Deep within Svartalfheim, the realm of dwarves, forge fires burned endlessly beneath rivers of stone. The sound of hammer striking metal echoed through underground halls older than memory itself, while molten iron flowed like glowing blood through the heart of the mountain. And among all dwarven craftsmen, two names became immortal: Brokkr and Eitri, the dwarves who forged the weapon of a god, Mjölnir, the hammer of Thor. In Norse mythology, dwarves were never ordinary miners or blacksmiths. They were master craftsmen, capable of creating divine artifacts, magical weapons, enchanted treasures, objects so powerful that even the gods depended upon them. Ancient stories claimed dwarves understood secrets hidden beneath the roots of Yggdrasil, the great world tree itself. Others believed their forge fires came from the first flames of creation, older than humanity, older than kingdoms, perhaps even older than the gods. And maybe that is why the gods respected them so deeply. Because dwarves did not inherit power through birth, they created it. The story of Mjolnir began, as many Norse stories do, with Loki. The trickster god was clever, chaotic, and endlessly arrogant. One day, while the goddess Sif slept peacefully, Loki cut away her legendary golden hair as a cruel joke. When Thor discovered what had happened, his rage shook Asgard itself. The thunder god nearly crushed Loki with his bare hands. Terrified, Loki begged for mercy and promised to replace Sif's hair with something even more magnificent. So Loki descended into Svartalfheim, deep beneath the world of men, into the halls of dwarven smiths. There he found the sons of Ivaldi, legendary craftsmen who forged magical golden hair for Sif, woven from enchanted gold so perfect that it would grow like real hair. But Loki could never remain silent for long. Drunk on arrogance, he boasted that no dwarf alive could ever forge greater treasures than those creations. And eventually, those words reached the ears of two brothers, Brokkr and Eitri, also known in some old stories as Sindri. The brothers accepted the challenge immediately. If they succeeded in forging greater treasures than the sons of Ivaldi, Loki would lose his head. And so, deep beneath Svartalfheim, the forge fires were prepared. Ancient furnaces roared with unbearable heat. Smoke climbed through endless stone corridors, while molten metal shimmered beneath the mountain like rivers of fire. Runes glowed faintly across the walls of the forge chamber, carved into ancient black stone by generations of forgotten smiths. And according to some interpretations of Norse folklore, the forge itself may have been magical, because ordinary fire could never create divine weapons. Eitri worked beside the furnace, shaping molten metal with impossible precision. Meanwhile, Brokkr operated the bellows, forcing air into the flames to keep the forge alive. And during the forging process, the bellows could never stop, not even for a single moment. Because if the fire weakened, the entire creation could fail. Some historians believe these myths reflected the very real dangers of ancient blacksmithing. Long before modern technology, forging weapons required brutal physical labor, extreme heat, exhaustion, smoke inhalation, burns, years of relentless repetition. Master blacksmiths often destroyed their bodies through their craft, their lungs blackened from smoke, their hands scarred permanently by fire and steel. To ancient civilizations, these craftsmen seemed almost supernatural. Perhaps that is why myths transformed them into dwarves. But Loki soon realized the brothers might actually succeed, and, more importantly, he feared losing his head. So the trickster god transformed himself into a fly. As the dwarves forged, Loki attacked them constantly, trying desperately to interrupt their work. He bit Brokkr's arm, his neck, his shoulder, but Brokkr endured the pain and continued working the bellows without stopping. From the forge emerged the first treasure, Gullinbusti, a magical golden boar whose shining mane illuminated darkness itself. Some stories claim the creature could run across sea and sky faster than any horse alive. Then came Draupnir, the legendary golden ring forged for Odin. Every 9th night, the ring produced 8 identical copies of itself, becoming a symbol of endless wealth and divine abundance. But the final creation would become the greatest of them all, Mjolnir. The forging of the hammer was different from everything that came before it. Harder, more dangerous. Some legends suggest the brothers used a metal unknown to the mortal world. Others claim the weapon was forged with the power of lightning itself, infused with ancient runes and the fury of storms. No myth fully explains how Mjolnir was created, only that forging it pushed the dwarven brothers to their absolute limits. The heat inside the chamber became unbearable, even for dwarves. Smoke filled the forge so heavily it became difficult to breathe. The furnaces roared like dragons trapped beneath the earth, while sparks exploded across the darkness like stars. And still, the brothers continued, because they understood something important. This weapon would shape the fate of gods themselves. Then Loki struck again. This time, the fly landed directly on Brokkr's face and bit his eyelid viciously. Blood poured into Brokkr's eye. He could barely see, and for one brief moment, his hand left the bellows. Only for an instant, but it was enough. When Eitri finally removed the hammer from the forge, silence filled the chamber. The weapon radiated impossible power. Lightning crackled faintly across its surface, while the air itself seemed to tremble around it. This was no ordinary weapon. This was something divine. But Eitri immediately noticed the flaw. The handle was shorter than intended, because the bellows had stopped for that brief moment during the forging process. A tiny imperfection within an otherwise godlike creation. Still, when the treasures were presented before the gods, Mjolnir surpassed them all. Thor immediately claimed the hammer as his own, and soon the weapon became legendary across the 9 realms. Mjolnir could crush mountains, destroy giants, summon lightning, and after being thrown, it would always return to Thor's hand. According to some myths, almost no being besides Thor could even lift it. But beneath every story of Thor, hidden quietly beneath the glory of gods and thunder, were the dwarves who forged his power. Brokkr and Eitri, the forgotten craftsmen behind the weapon of God. And perhaps the most fascinating part of the story is this: Mjolnir was never truly perfect.
its short handle remained forever, a flaw created through pain, exhaustion, and interruption during the forging process. Yet, despite that imperfection, the hammer still became one of the greatest weapons in mythology, perhaps even because of it. This idea appears often throughout ancient folklore. Perfection is impossible. Even divine creations carry flaws, and sometimes those flaws become part of the legend itself. Centuries later, Viking warriors still wore small Mjölnir pendants around their necks, not merely as symbols of Thor, but as protection against darkness, chaos, and death.
Archaeologists have discovered these pendants across Scandinavia and beyond, proving that belief in Thor's hammer survived long after the Viking Age faded into history. Even today, Mjolnir remains one of the most recognizable mythological weapons ever created, appearing in books, games, films, and fantasy stories across the world. But many forget its true origin. The hammer of Thor was not forged by gods. It was born deep beneath the mountains, within smoke, stone, fire, and the relentless labor of dwarven hands. Created by Brokkr and Eitri, the dwarves who forged the weapon of thunder itself. And perhaps somewhere beneath forgotten mountains, beyond the reach of men, the ancient forge fires of Svartalfheim still burn, and the sound of dwarven hammers still echoes through the dark. Subscribe to Nerd of Myth for more forgotten legends, ancient folklore, and mythical stories hidden beneath history itself.